Hi, everyone, and welcome to SPED Homeschool Conversations. We are so happy to have you with us. We are live not only on Facebook, but we are now live on Periscope as well as YouTube. And so if you are new to our broadcast live, maybe you've only watched it pre-recorded, we are happy that you're with us, and we are excited that you can actually be part of this conversation. So just know that if you put things into the conversation as we're going, we can bring that in. But we're going to talk tonight about how to save money on an allergy-friendly diet. And this broadcast is put on by SPED Homeschool, and this month our theme is organization. And maybe it doesn't seem like organization in homeschool and talking about an allergy-friendly diet and saving money, but that is a huge thing on mom's plate right. when you manage school. And our guest is Shelly Longenecker, and she is from Dinner for $1. And she's going to share with us just things that she's learned, that she's written about in her book, as well as has on her website, and just a lot of really good resources for you if you're looking at how do I manage this right. and get through. So welcome, Shelly. We are so glad to have you here tonight.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here, getting to spend my evening with you and share with you and your readers just some things that we've learned over the years.
Definitely.
You're absolutely right that organization and homeschooling and food, they really all go hand in hand together because it is difficult to manage all of the plates that we are spinning as homeschool moms. If you have a kid with food sensitivities or food allergies, it can really create a lot of problems in the organization of your home, with your finances, and with your time. And so I know we learned that firsthand, and you probably have learned that over the years too.
Yes, definitely. It's such a balance, and I know we're going to talk a lot about that and just the balance tonight. And we also want to thank Bookshark for sponsoring this episode. We'll hear some more as we hit about the middle of this episode from them, but thank you for sponsoring this and letting us have the opportunity to talk about this important subject tonight. So Shelly, I would just love for us to get started and just have you introduce, yourself, why you're so passionate about this subject, and just kind of how just everything that you've created came about.
Sure. So how did we get here today?
Right, exactly.
About this. It's a good story, and I won't start back in 1974 when I was born. But I will keep our story relevant because I think that a lot of your readers will relate to it. We were this Dinner for $1. Okay, so I started Dinner for $1, and that's where I teach people how I feed my family a simple, allergy-friendly, whole food diet with lots of fruits and veggies for $1 per person per meal. Okay, so that's kind of a lot, right? That's simple. That's important to me. I started with the word simple because I'm a homeschool mom. Allergy-friendly, whole food, veggie forward for $1 per person per meal. So that's my business, and that's what I teach people. And I'm going to tell you why I'm passionate about that in a minute. But I wasn't always this way. In fact, I was pretty much a train wreck with my food system and with our finances many years ago. So it started probably about 10 years ago. Dinner for $1 started when we have 4 children. We homeschool. Now we homeschool 2 of them. At the time we were homeschooling, all 4 of them. Wow. Or anyway, I can't really remember. Let me just start over.
It was enough, right?
Yeah. About 10 years ago, our number 2 child was very, very ill. I mean, vomiting 25 times a day, every day. Wow. Food was getting stuck in his throat, and we were legitimately using our fingers and hooking food lodged into his throat during dinner time. So he was very ill. Doctors couldn't figure out what was wrong. They finally figured out he had an autoimmune disease of his esophagus, and it was exacerbated by food allergies and food sensitivities. So they had us go on an elimination diet, and we saw results immediately. I mean, within like 3 days, he had stopped vomiting. Within, a couple of weeks, his asthma was gone. Within a few weeks, all of his stomach aches were gone. It was profound. And so we decided, because it was an autoimmune disease, we decided that in addition to being just allergy friendly, we were also going to use whole food and having a lot of fresh produce. And, I'm not a medical professional, so I'm not going to go into that, but that was just the research that we did with our physicians and on our own, realizing we needed to calm down his immune system. And so we dove all the way into that, and we never looked at the cost once. I just said to my husband, this is what we've got to do. And I just did it. And anytime there were any articles about how to save money on groceries, I didn't read them because I was sure they were feeding their family hamburger helper and using coupons for Captain Crunch or, whatever. And so I never looked at the budget, and I was spending like all day in the kitchen, 2 to 3 hours a day, cooking everything from scratch. And we did that for years. Fast forward probably 5 years. I never looked at the budget at all. Okay. By now we have 4 children. We're homeschooling all 4 of them. We're running 2 businesses. We're really busy.
Wow. Yeah.
And
you're not sleeping.
Exactly. Exactly. And so we were eating out a ton because my food system was so complicated. I couldn't, by the end of the day, I had a toddler and a kindergartner and a junior higher and a high schooler. And I was like doing algebra and don't set the house on fire, all at once. And so I was always calling my husband to get takeout because I was just, I know that you've never done that. You've never called your husband on the way home, please pick up takeout so that I don't lose my mind. Right. So my husband ended up losing half of his contracts. We're fully self-employed people, and we had to evaluate our budget like hardcore. Okay. So this is like 5 years later. We had been eating that way for a long time. We had never sat down to look at our budget. And when we sat down, we were spending $2,000 a month on food.
Wow.
Right. We were spending $1,200 a month on groceries and $800 a month eating out. And when I first published my book, I was so embarrassed to report that. But because I was sure we were the only ones on the planet.
People want to.
Right. But you know what I learned, Peggy? I learned that if you're not living on a budget and you've got food allergies and you're trying to eat healthy, pretty much everybody's spending about $1,200 or more a month when they're not being careful. And so it definitely wasn't just me, but anyway, so I told my husband, I said, okay, we've got to cut our food bill. I am committed to doing that because we need to do it, but we can't change our diet. We still have to eat allergy free. We need to eat whole food. We need a lot of fruits and vegetables. So I said, I'm going to do whatever I can. And I took the next 12 weeks and I prayed and I asked God for wisdom because I knew that I needed to make this change in our life. But I also knew that we had these needs to eat this certain way. And so I just asked for wisdom. And I sat down, Peggy, and I broke down my entire food system. And now I teach people to think in terms, not in terms of menu planning, but in terms of a food system, right? So you've got to, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but I sat down and I evaluated my whole food system. I looked at, okay, what's working? What isn't working? What bad habits have gotten me to this place where I'm spending $2,000 a month on food? I mean, that's like a small car, like every month.
Well, that sounds extreme when you put it that way.
Right?
But it truly is.
Yeah. And so anyway, I systemically made changes little by little. I have my master's in counseling and I understand something about change, and that is change is hard. And so what I did is I just focused on a couple habits at a time, reworking them, making new habits. And I ended up getting my food bill down to $1 per person per meal. And I never intended on writing a book about it. I never intended on teaching on it. We lived that way for another several years. Yeah. And when my youngest finally entered kindergarten, we had small children for like 700 years here. So when my youngest entered kindergarten, I looked at my husband and I said, I'm ready to do something outside the house. And so that's when everybody had asked me, how do you do that? All of my friends, how do you feed your family for $1 per meal? Because they knew how we ate. And I thought, I think I have something that I have a system where I can help other people. And I know, and you know this too, Americans, we have a health crisis. There are so many chronic diseases that we're all living with. We also have financial challenges that are significant. And inside the church, it isn't any different than outside the church. I mean, we're living in the same debt with the same amount of savings. And I just felt a passion to help people understand so that they didn't make the same mistake I did, that it's possible to feed your family very well on a very tight budget and a very tight schedule. Because those are the two biggest reasons
to look at it from both of those points of view, because
it is. Because I should say in a caveat, I feed my family for $1 per person per meal, and I don't use any coupons ever. So this is not like a couponing program, and I don't run all over town, and I absolutely am not. My goal is not to spend the very least amount of money possible on food. My goal is to balance the amount of time, money, and energy that I have available.
Yeah, and it's a universal healthy way to look at eating versus these extremes that we hear so much about. And they turn us off when we see them if we're striving for something more than just the budget or just the time or whatever, because it just doesn't, it seems like it's not even attainable in in your normal world. You have to become somebody different to do that.
I totally agree. And as a mental health professional, I get really frustrated by that because people really get into the all or nothing thinking. And, I am way more interested in helping people create change that's sustainable for the long term, right? We want to eat well for a lifetime. And in order to do that, it has to be balanced. Like we can't be juicing broccoli 7 meals a day. Like
exactly.
That's not sustainable. But, I could throw broccoli on my plate 3 times a week for the rest of my life. Like that's a sustainable change. And so I am very much about, especially for homeschooling moms, because our margin is so narrow. We have such a narrow margin. So helping women simplify their system so that they can meet the needs of their family with the amount of energy that they have available.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah,
definitely. And if you are one of those people and you're watching and you have any questions or comments, we would love to hear from you. Even if just a shout out of where you're watching from, we'd love that. But we're just going to dive into some of Shelly's advice on how to eat this way, but yet not drive yourself crazy.
Right.
Which is so important. And I love that you say a whole foods diet. Can you explain a little bit about, if maybe somebody in our audience doesn't understand what that means, what specifically is a whole foods diet?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I'm just going to give a giant caveat at the beginning. I'm not a health professional at all. So I'm not a food, expert. I'm just a mom who's done research with her physicians to find the diet that's best for our family. And for our family, that is a whole food diet with lots of produce. So a whole food diet just means, in my mind, how God made it.
Right.
So, if it can be grown, if it was alive at some point, if it can be grown to eat those things. And if it's been made in a factory to try to avoid it or reduce it as much as possible. So looking for food that's grown, not made, is just kind of a general idea. And the reason that I talk about a whole food diet more than any other thing is it's pretty universally accepted, because oh my goodness, there's so many food views about what's the best way to eat, right?
Yes.
You need to be vegan, you need to be keto, you need to be juicing, and there really is very little agreement, but almost everyone can agree that the closer you get to a whole food diet, get away from processed foods, the more produce you get on your plate. Pretty much everyone can agree with all of those things. And so that's why I teach from that. So,
right.
But
and also it's easier on an allergy-friendly diet that you're going to know what is in your food so that you're not getting reactions as well.
Absolutely. Total. And that is absolutely true. If you go to a whole food diet, you pick up a bag of frozen corn, it's pretty easy to know what's in that. Like it's corn. Okay. And it is much easier to deal with allergies and sensitivities when you are working with a whole food diet than processed, because, if you have 42 ingredients in a package, it's really hard to know what you're reacting to.
Definitely. Yeah. And some of those food additives are so obscurely named now, you don't even know where they originated from.
No. And we really don't know what effect they are having on our health. So,
Yeah, definitely. So I know the first question that you said that needs to be addressed is to know your why.
Yeah.
So what exactly does that mean? And what do we need to look at personally in our own lives as we're thinking, I need to change something,
right?
But why am I changing it? And how's that going to happen?
Well, I think anytime that we're looking at making major changes in our life in any area, let's say that you want to improve your marriage, or you want to improve your relationship with one of your children, or you want to be more involved in the community. Anytime we make any change in our life, we really need to know why we're doing it, because change is really difficult. We're prone to not change. That's how we're prone to just stay exactly where we're at. And so to create any type of change in our life in any area is a state of friction, and we resist it mentally, spiritually, physically, practically. And so I always teach people that if you want to change your food or your money, you are going to need a really strong why. And in these areas particularly, because several reasons why. The marketing messages that are out there
yes, I didn't even think about that side of it.
All day, every day, we are getting bombarded with, eat what you want when you want it. All these Grubhub commercials where, you just pull out your phone and you order 72 different takeout cuisines, and, they all come at one time. And it literally says something like, get exactly what you want when you want it. Well, we're getting those marketing messages all day, every day.
Right.
Both with our money and with our food. And then the second reason changing food is so difficult is we love to please ourselves by the things we put in our mouth. And I know that myself, and I've never even shared this, but as a homeschooling mom, you're home all day without other adults and your kids, and they might be annoying you, or they might be irritating you, or they're fighting. And, you might start snacking just to give yourself some sense of pleasure in the middle of a very difficult time. Right.
Right.
And so creating food change is difficult. Creating financial change is difficult. And so I always teach that you have to know why you want to create those changes in your life if you're going to do it. And in my story, you remember that we created a strong food change suddenly, right? Because my son was throwing up 25 times a day. Right. We had a strong why to change our food system.
Exactly. Yeah. I think someone who maybe doesn't have such a strong why would be a little harder.
It will be harder.
Yeah.
But you just have to find what your why is. You know, maybe you want to lose 15 pounds, or maybe you want to have more energy, or maybe your joints are hurting, or maybe your husband's cholesterol is high, or your blood pressure is up, you know. But if you don't have a clearly defined why for changing your food, you just simply aren't going to change it. I'm just saying, you're not just going to suddenly eat better just because it might be a good idea because Oprah said you should, or, you know, whatever. Like,
right. Exactly.
it won't happen. And then in our story, you know, we didn't have a strong financial why until 5 years later. We got a strong financial why. And all of a sudden I needed to make a change. And so then I got serious. You know, we had already made the food change, but then, you know, 5 years later, we made the financial change. Right. And I only did that because I had to. I wasn't sitting around going, oh, I know what I want to do. I want to evaluate my food system and streamline it.
Right. Oftentimes crisis can act in a very good way if we let it do that and to be our why and change.
And you know, I'll just say, like, something that I learned in my own journey when we had that strong financial change, we actually did go through the Dave Ramsey system during that time. And you know, I'm not going to talk about that a lot here. I know he's a polarizing figure. So the only thing I want to say is what I did learn when we were going through that is only 40%. Oh gosh, I cannot believe I forgot this statistic.
Well, we'll come back to that.
Yeah. Only 16% of Americans are saving 15% or more for retirement.
Wow. And is that really?
Yes. And a very small percentage, somewhere possibly around 40%, have only about 40% have $1,000 saved. Okay. So if you're listening to this and you don't have this strong financial crisis like what we had, where our budget was cut in half, but if you're living without $1,000 in a savings account, I'm going to call that, I am here to encourage you as much as possible to seriously consider that being your strong financial why, because everyone needs at least $1,000 in a savings account, because your tires are going to go flat. Your roof is going to have a leak. You're going to need a crown that you weren't planning on. You know, there's just stuff. I think we had all three of those things in this last month: a crown, a roof, and a tire, plus more. So there are strong financial needs. But unless you feel that inside your own mind, you're not going to create the change.
Right. Yeah. So. And I've heard from so many people, because we changed our diet drastically. I mean, even more than you did. We were talking about this earlier, and I don't actually talk about it much because it was so extreme. But our whole family had to have a buy-in. My husband, my kids. Do you want to talk a little bit about how you share that why with your family?
Oh, gosh. So I haven't thought about that in a long time, because we've been eating this way for so long. You know, I think it was a little easier for us, Peggy, because our son was so sick.
Right.
Everyone bought in.
Wanted him to be
better. He got better really. It was very obvious the effects that it had on him. And I know that we are so blessed. And anytime I think about this, I'm so grateful. We had full support from all of our friends and all of our family. And I know that some families do not have that. Like, you have all those crazy families who sneak food allergies just to see if their kid has a reaction. And I mean, I'm not laughing. I'm only laughing right then just to keep from saying things I shouldn't say on video, because that's terrible. I mean, anyway, so we really didn't have to face that. I think the buy-in, maybe they didn't have it initially, but when they saw the results, and then our whole family decided to eat that way just because we felt so much better.
You do, yes.
We felt so much better, and we just, and you know, we've had times where we've let junk food creep into our life and bad habits, and then we start feeling bloated and having, you know, we're tired and crabby, and then we're like, oh, it's time to clean up our diet. And so we've all done it long enough where we can feel and see the results.
Yeah. And I think that in the long run, we've seen the same thing, that even my son who's away at college, he had to live on the meal plan last year because he just could not get an efficiency apartment, and he just could. I mean, he barely made it through the year, and he's like, "Mom, I need regular groceries." And he doesn't mind cooking for himself because he does feel better. So, yeah, definitely. So, so what about habits?
Yeah. I love to talk about habits. It's actually my favorite thing to talk about, because here's what happens to people. They set a resolution or they set a decision. I'm going to lower my food bill. I'm going to get healthier. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to spend less money. We're going to save more money. Those are all fantastic ideas. I support all of that.
This is the time of the year that everybody does that too.
They do. And 2 of the top 3 resolutions are losing weight and spending less or saving more. I can't remember how they phrase it. So I know that it's on people's minds, but those are good things. But here's the problem. Unless you address the entire system of your food life, and unless you address the habits of your food life, you're not going to create change. So, you know, I already talked about step 1 is know your why. I already said you're not going to create change unless you have a strong reason to create change. Okay. So let's say that you found your strong reason. You know, you want to lower your cholesterol, or you want to save for a trip to Disneyland, and you're going to cut that money out of your grocery budget, and then you're going to take your family to Disneyland in a year. Okay. That's an exciting why. So now you're like, okay, what do I do? Well, I always encourage people. So if you think about what ended up on your plate for dinner tonight, it did not magically appear there, right?
Right.
It was a series, unfortunately. And if I could figure that out, that would be it. Unfortunately, it does not magically appear on our plate. It is a series of 5 or 6 or 10 different steps that led us there. And let me show you what I mean. So you first have to plan your food, then you have to shop for your food, then you have to cook the food, then you have to use up the food, and then you have to store the food. Okay, so you have planning, shopping, cooking, using, and storing. If you have a problem in your food system, like you're spending too much, let's say more than you want to, you really need to address each of those 5 areas. And maybe you're doing great in 2 of them. Maybe you're a rock star planner and a rock star shopper, but you get it home and then you don't cook it. And you throw it away. Or maybe you're a great planner, a great shopper, a great cooker, but then you don't store it well and reuse it well. And so you have waste on the back end. And so all of us have parts that we're doing well somewhere along the way, and parts where maybe we could use improvement. And so this is actually where I prayed for wisdom. And I sat down at the table with a notebook and a pen, and I call this my big girl panty talk. This is where I gave myself the big girl panty talk, like, okay, it's time to be honest with yourself. What are you doing wrong here? Or what's not successful? What's not working? Where are the holes in my ship that I need to find and like plug up? And so I'll just give a couple,
because we think we're doing so good.
Right. And if we just say to ourselves, something like this, which you've probably said to yourself, and maybe your listeners have said this, we need to eat out less. Okay, well, that's a great goal. How are you going to accomplish that goal? Okay, why are you eating out more than you want to be eating out? Okay, I'll tell you this. So I had to ask myself that. Shelly, why are you eating out more than you want to be eating out? Okay, well, I forget to take my meat out of the freezer.
That's a big one.
Okay, there's a big one. And so then it's not defrosted. I can't turn that into something. And I didn't think about dinner until 5 o'clock. Okay, there's problem number 2. And now I have frozen meat and I'm thinking about dinner at 5 o'clock. So then I'm calling my husband and getting takeout. Right. Okay, so getting less takeout might involve 2 new habits for me. When am I going to pull my meat out of the freezer? Okay, so what about I eat dinner, we do cleanup, and I go out and I pull my meat out of the freezer that I'm going to use tomorrow, and I make it a part of dinner tonight, pulling out my meat for dinner tomorrow. And I found that when I made that one change, that solved at least half of my takeout problem right there. Wow. And almost everywhere where I speak, everybody has the take the meat out of the freezer problem. And it's a common problem. And so when you're evaluating your habits and you're realizing where your problems are at, and then you're creating solutions for those problems, you know, maybe it's setting an alarm on your phone. Okay. Right. And then another solution, not thinking about dinner till 5 p.m. Okay, well, we already solved that by pulling the meat out of the freezer the night before, right? So that solved 2 problems. But then let's say you set a timer on your phone for 3 p.m. Every day at 3 p.m., I stop everything I'm doing and go figure out what I'm doing about dinner. If you only ever made those 2 changes, if you were just trying to get less takeout or eat out less, those 2 habits would help you eat out less. Right. And so I encourage people to look at those 5 steps. So look at your planning, look at your shopping, look at your cooking, look at your using and your storing, and just sit down over each of those phases and ask yourself, okay, how am I doing at planning? Okay, am I putting together meals? Am I planning for meals that everybody is enjoying? No. Okay, that's part of the problem. Everybody hates the food I'm planning and then it gets thrown out. Okay, so then you have a planning problem. Okay, well, if that's your problem, let's create a solution to that. Okay, going to each member in the family and sitting down and saying, hey, what 3 meals would you like to see me cook this month? And including everybody in the process. So that helps solve, a planning problem. So hopefully that
we're going to eat the leftovers too.
Right.
It's huge.
It is. And I have a whole strategy on that. I think it's pretty universal that no one loves leftovers, right? I mean, that's just like, no one really loves them. And so I really work hard to repurpose leftovers into different meals. And I'm the queen of that. And you probably are too. And that's definitely the secret in our house for getting those leftovers used up. Anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Well, we're going to hear from our sponsor, and I'll let Shelly take a little break, and then we're going to come back, and she's got 2 more points to still talk to us about as we wrap up. But just know, if you have comments or questions that are watching, we would love you to be part of our conversation. And so definitely make sure to let us know you're there. Tell us where you're from. We're excited to be also on YouTube Live starting tonight. This broadcast has actually been going on for almost 2 years. In February, it'll be our 2-year anniversary. But we're on Periscope and YouTube Live for the first time tonight. We've always been on just Facebook. So just want to talk to you a little bit about Bookshark. They are our sponsor for this evening. And we want to thank them for sponsoring this. And you can definitely check out their website. It's bookshark.com and find the resources. But Bookshark is a literature-based 4-day faith-neutral curriculum. And Kim McNary, a busy homeschool mom, says, my daughter is on the spectrum as well as has OCD and has instantly taken to this curriculum. It's incredibly structured, which makes us both ecstatic. The books are great and the kids are awesome too. I'm running my daughter to all kinds of appointments and the curriculum fits in amazingly. We are a first-year Bookshark customer and happy as a lark. Well, Kim is right. Bookshark is a fully planned 4-day curriculum that flexes to match your busy lifestyle. The detailed and structured guide lays everything out so clearly that you're prepared to teach in mere minutes every day. Just open your guide, gather your resources, which are included, and just go. Curriculum for ages 4 through 16 is available in all subject packages or by individual academic areas. Reading with history, language, arts, science, and math. With Bookshark's literature-rich programs, your children will read or have read to them 35 to 50 engaging books each year. So visit bookshark.com for more information about their curriculum. You can also download samples at their website or request a catalog. So definitely check them out. And we're talking about children with OCD and other learning issues on the spectrum because we are SPED Homeschool. SPED Homeschool is our goal is to empower parents to homeschool children with special educational needs. So that's what we're all about. If you're just joining us for the conversation on food, that's great. We love that, but we know that a lot of parents who have kids with learning issues also struggle with dietary issues, and so that is why this broadcast was so wonderful to add to our lineup on organization this month. And just so you know, Shelly's going to be back with me again in April to talk about planning menus or just planning out and more about that side of this instead of we're talking about the budget more tonight. So definitely you'll want to come for part 2 as well in April. So check out our schedule. We have a whole schedule of all of our interviews now on our website as well, which is exciting. So we're talking about habits, and you know, I think in addition to habits, we had withdrawals because our habits had affected our bodies, and it was so. I mean, we did an anti-candida diet, which took all the sugars out, and my kids were just beside themselves that there was no sugars, no starches in our diet instantly, and so I think those are things that we often don't even think about, that we are so trained, our body's so trained habitually to get a reward when we eat, and we have to be ready that that's going to happen as well.
I'm glad you brought that up because it's been such a while for us. And that is exactly part of the reason that I say that you have to have a strong why, because unless you do, you're just you're gonna cave in because it's hard. It is.
Yeah. We found that it was nice because we had actually moved the same month. We changed our diet. So when we moved, everything that we weren't going to eat was thrown in the trash, and we just moved to our farm, and it was all whole foods. Except our babysitter snuck candy to my husband. So
that is classic.
I know. She felt so bad for him, and I was like, he needs to be on this diet too.
That is funny.
So, but
at least she didn't sneak it. So she didn't sneak it to the children, at least, right?
Oh no, she.
Well, that's positive. That's positive.
If she did that.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, so you talked in your 5 things about the habits that we have and how planning has so many different components. Do you want to talk a little bit about just the different things? Because I think oftentimes when we think about planning food, we just think about our grocery list.
Yeah.
But there's a whole lot more to that, isn't there?
There is. And I think that's actually one of the huge mistakes of people when they're considering, how they want to eat and getting food on the table is that they don't think about it in terms of a system and the habits that you need to be taking in order to set yourself up for success. And so when I talk to people about making a plan, they're like, oh yeah, a meal plan. I make a meal plan. And I'm like, well, yeah, you do need a meal plan, but you need a little bit more planning. And so I really like to talk to people about, not only do you need a meal plan, which you do, you do need to have a meal plan. You need to have, more importantly, I think you need to have a time plan. Okay, so when am I going to sit down and decide what our family is going to eat this week? Okay, when am I going to make that trip to the store? Okay, when am I going to prep my stuff for, to be successful for the busy week when it comes up? Yeah. When am I going to pull my meat out of the freezer? Those are the time questions that we need to create answers for if we're going to be successful in our food system. And when I look back in my life, when I've been successful with my food system and when I'm not, it has absolutely come down to my time plan, for sure. It's when I do not carve out the time to make a plan, and somehow I just try to pretend that somehow we'll just be able to do it, like without any thought whatsoever. And it doesn't take a lot of time. And I think the problem, and I'm sure that you can relate to this both in your work with moms in homeschooling, it's that we have to think of it ahead of time. So if we plan ahead of time, it actually takes us far less time than if we wait until 5 p.m. and, everybody's hungry. And this is something that I teach, is that when I sit down and make a plan, I've been on a little bit of a break, but typically I shop every 2 weeks, and I make all of our food decisions twice a month. So I sit down in a 2-hour time period and I make all of my food decisions all at one time. This is my number one energy saving tip that I could give to moms, because the alternative is, let's say we've got 6 people in our home. I haven't done this math in a long time. They each need to eat 3 times a day. So that's 18 food decisions a day. I don't know what that is times, let's just say it's 20 a day. So let's say it's 140 food decisions a week. Wow. Let's just estimating. Okay. Right. So I have a choice that I can sit down in one sitting and just make those 140 food decisions in a 1-hour time period. If I'm planning for a week, I can do that in about an hour. If I'm planning for 2 weeks, I need a couple hours. The alternative is every single time that somebody's hungry, I have to make a food decision. Right. So I'm going to make 140 food decisions one by one by one by one. And by the end of the week, I feel like somebody should just stab me with a carrot because I'm so frustrated, right?
Exactly.
Because then you're thinking about food all the time.
Exactly. You have no downtime from it.
Yep. And it takes way too high of a priority in your life. And so not only has it taken way more energy than you ever want to give your food life, right, but it also doubles or triples the amount of time that you spend on it. So the greatest way to save time and energy in your food life is to have a designated time where you're making those decisions and make them all at once. And then, you set that up. We have it when I come back next time. I'm actually teaching how we get a whole food allergy-friendly diet, how we get a whole food allergy-friendly dinner on the table in 15 minutes, Monday through Friday. So our meal time in the busy week takes us about 15 minutes of prep. But that's because I've made my decisions already, and I just have to walk it out. And so when it was as important to me to save time and energy on food prep as it was to save money.
Yeah. And I think, in our busy schedules now, that's why we spend more, is because we're trying to move everything around, and yet we don't see it in the big picture like you're talking about, that it is taking us, and we're making so many decisions on a consistent basis instead of managing it more in chunks.
Right. Ahead of it. You got to get kind of in front of it a little bit. And then that's where the time and energy savings happens, is in front of the decision. Yeah.
We did that on our vacation. My husband and I were gone for a week, and we planned out our menu, and we knew what we were going to eat at our rental house, and I didn't have to think about it. I could enjoy my vacation.
That is so nice. Good job. I don't know if I've done that. I mean, I do that when we travel with family, but because of course it's even more complicated. You have to make more decisions. You have to be even more careful or well planned out when you're traveling with kids. But good job planning that when it's just the two of you.
No, they offered a grocery service for our house, and I said, okay, get a whole chicken. Yeah. And then I just cooked it up. We had chicken for like 5 meals, and it was perfect. But yeah, I didn't have to think about it. It was in the fridge. So
that's awesome.
But yeah, it's it takes some creative planning, and definitely you can enjoy your life and do what you need to do. Teach your kids. So
exactly.
So true. So what about wants versus needs? And I know this is huge in the American diet, and well, probably universal worldwide too, now that I was just out of the country this last week and saw people shopping, and it seems to be about the same with different cultures as well.
Yeah. Well, I definitely teach people, if you take any financial planning class of any sort, they'll tell you that if you're trying to get out of debt or create a savings plan or start planning for your retirement, or, you need to know the difference between your wants and your needs, right? Yeah. And I think that's a really common financial teaching.
Right.
You make sure you provide for all of your needs first. And then if you have extra, then you prioritize your wants, right? I think that's a common teaching, but I think people forget, they think food is a need, clearly, right? We all need food. We can't escape that, even though we try every day to not have to feed ourselves. We can't escape that. And so somehow in our minds, we think, food is a need. And then somehow we kind of transition that to all food is a need. All the food that I want to eat is a need. All the food that Johnny wants is a need. Okay. And little Sarah, she wants to have this every day. And so, that's a need too. Okay. And so, and I'm definitely not talking about kids who are, as your parent, what their needs are and what their wants are.
Oh, definitely. Okay? Yeah.
And so if you have a kid who has a texture issue with food and you're working on that, that's a need and you need to address that. Okay. And if I have a kid who doesn't have a food texture issue and they're just being a pain about something, right. as their mom, I can see, that's a want. How am I going to handle that as their parent? Right. Okay. And so my job as their parent is to meet all of their needs. Right. And then as a mom, because I have a mother's heart, I want to meet some of their wants because we like to give good things to our children. And, so balancing that in our financial life and in our food life, no one thinks about this, right? But each of our kids in our home actually all have different nutritional needs. I have a teenage boy, he's 16. He runs a landscaping company. And he's, in the middle of, puberty and growing and he has extreme allergies and the autoimmune disease. His food needs are very, very specific. He needs to have a certain amount of protein every day, a certain amount of calories. My other kids are smaller and they don't have all of those demands, those same demands. And so, for instance, this is a perfect example. When we were overhauling our food system, we used to serve Trader Joe's chicken apple sausage every morning for breakfast. Everybody got one. Okay. That was what we did. And then we had with it eggs or, oatmeal or something like that. Mm-hmm. Okay. Each of those sausages is $1. Okay. So 6 people, you're talking $180 a month just for everybody to have one sausage a morning.
And that's not your full breakfast even.
Right. That's just part of the breakfast. And so when I was sitting down and I'm evaluating, that day where I had my big girl panty talk, right? I'm sitting there with my notebook. I have to slash my food bill. I also have to meet my family's food needs. So I'm looking at my breakfast. I'm going $180 just on one sausage per person. Okay.
Right.
I can't afford that. So what can I do? Okay. So we switched our breakfast to steel cut oats and eggs for those who didn't have egg allergy in our home, or a hash brown and an egg. Okay. So we switched that to lower our cost. Fast forward, my son, the one I just mentioned, he started passing out. He had a seizure. This was summertime. I mentioned landscaping company. He's a go-kart racer. We take him to the doctor. Thankfully, nothing was wrong with him. Turned out he was not getting enough nutrition. He was not getting enough calories, enough fat, enough protein for his diet. And we actually had to add back in. He had to add back in those chicken apple sausages. But he's the only one who gets them every morning for breakfast because he needs those.
Right.
He needs them. The other people don't need them, but we all like them. And so we have those one time a week as a family on the weekend. Everybody has a sausage. And I know this sounds so silly because it's like, it's just a sausage, but this is exactly what I'm talking about.
It's where those changes make a huge difference in your budget.
They do.
Yeah, I know. We raised our own cows and we had 2 teenage boys. It was the only way we could keep the meat costs down.
Yes. And so it's important that we meet their needs, and then we meet their wants as we are able to afford that, or as we as parents decide, they can have this much Gatorade a month, or, whatever your choices are. I'm not here to say what your choices should be parenting your kids, but they don't have to get everything that they want whenever they want it, and it isn't good for them. And we know that as parents in other areas of life, we know that we don't buy them every toy they ever want, but somehow we forget that in their food life. They don't need to have orange juice every day, or, I'm just picking random things. Maybe your kid needs orange juice, So hopefully I was able to make my point in a way that
it helps to evaluate. I think that's what it all boils down to, is when we can evaluate what is a want, what is a need, and then stack that up to what is that want versus need costing.
Right.
And how can we balance that well so that we meet our budget and yet at the same time provide for the nutritional needs, because a lot of time those wants aren't as high in nutrition as our needs. And your story was very different, but and it does take, as our children grow and need different nutritional needs, those things have to be taken into consideration as well. And I think that's another point, is that over time, your plan is going to have to change because your kids change, your family changes,
right.
And so that will have to fluctuate as well.
Yeah. And one thing I'll just add on the end of that, one way that we combat this is that we have like a fun food night. And so, our regular life is pretty structured with our food and, pretty whole food focused and lots of fruits and veggies. And it's all about meeting our needs with the amount of time, money, and energy we have available, which means it's simple. It's not, none of my recipes are going to win awards because we're just trying to eat, but once a week or twice a month, we have a meal that isn't $1 per meal. It's, we have a nice steak and, roasted asparagus and a big baked potato. And, we might even have like a fun dessert at the end of it, or, so we I think it's important, because we talked about this early on, to loop back around and say, I am interested in a lifelong habit of good eating and good financial stewardship.
Mm-hmm.
And part of that is to have some fun along the way. And that will help me be able to sustain those habits forever. I mean, I don't want to have vegetable soup all day, every day, 7 days a week, right?
Definitely.
But I can have that 3 or 4 times a week, and be totally happy.
Yeah. Well, we all need breaks. We all need, change. Well, there are some people that like to eat the same thing every day. They're very few and far between. But yes, change is nice, and to be able to reward yourself too. And it doesn't have to be extravagant all the time, but our family kind of goes the opposite. We do a popcorn night once a week, and that's all we have is popcorn for dinner. And then we put out some veggies and fruit, and then everybody knows we sit down, watch a movie, and have popcorn. And if you're hungry later, there's leftovers in the fridge.
Nice. Exactly.
So that way I don't have to cook. It's usually Saturday night. So
I like that.
Yeah. But yeah, well, this has been such a good discussion, and I hope that you as our audience have enjoyed it. And I know I have, and I'm looking forward to our next session in April. I do want to pull up, Shelly has shared a link right here to get a free chapter from her book. If you want to go to that link, it's dinner for $1.ck.page, and then /196E212BD6. And I'll just keep that going so that you can see that as we wrap up. But any closing remarks for this evening for our audience? Just encouragement or?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having me. It was great to visit with you. I think my biggest encouragement would be that it's possible. It's possible to meet the needs of your family on a tight budget and a tight schedule. And I didn't know that it was possible. And that's how I got us into the position that we were in. And that's why I'm so passionate now to share with other, especially homeschoolers, that it's possible to get that dinner on the table and have it be full of nutrition and be just a small amount of time and a small amount of money. And I am around. I am not just trying to sell things. I really am trying to help people hit their food and their financial goals, because both of those are important. And so I'm around for support and encouragement. The chapter, even if you never want to hear from me again, I highly recommend the chapter. It's called Recipe-Free Cooking. And it's about learning how to cook without recipes and why that's important. It was a major change for me in our food system. And I'm serious that if you want to change even just one thing, just download that chapter and try it. I think it'll help you save time and money and energy.
I'll have to look at that. Yes, I don't cook with recipes. It drives my husband crazy. He's like, "Do you remember how you did this?" I'm like,
"Nope."
Maybe.
Right.
But then my kids say, "We don't eat out because mom cooks better than any restaurant we could go to." So I get that too. But that's kind of fun. But yeah, I really don't like to go out to eat because I'm so critical of food. But well, that's exciting. So definitely, I highly agree with the no recipe thing. It's you get way too many ingredients and you're buying things you don't need. You can eat what you got. So definitely check out Shelly's resource. And we do want to thank Bookshark again for sponsoring this episode of SPED Homeschool Conversations. And if you're watching us live, you can watch the re-recording on all of these places we're broadcasting to. Otherwise, it's going to a podcast as well on Sunday. And you can find our podcast on iTunes and Google Play. Just search for SPED Homeschool Conversations. You'll find all of our past episodes. We have almost 2 years. So there's lots of good content out there. But thank you, Bookshark. We appreciate your sponsorship. And for viewers like you, we are a nonprofit. We are supported by our donations that come in to SPED Homeschool, and we are here to just empower parents to homeschool children with special educational needs. And whether they do that for reasons for necessity or just because they feel like that's the best choice for their child, we just want to make sure they have the best resources in front of them. So, which happen to be things like Shelly talks about. So we're excited that every week we can bring up a new topic. So thanks so much, Shelly. I have enjoyed this conversation as well, and I appreciate your time and wisdom that you shared with us tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah. So next week we are continuing the organization theme, but taking a whole different tangent, and we're talking about scheduling and cultivating rest as a homeschool mom, and where do you find that and how do you keep it? And so Annie Hutchinson is going to be joining us and talking about that and some resources that she's created to actually help you do that. So I'm excited to do that. But thanks everybody for joining us. We greatly appreciate it. I want you to check out Shelly's website, dinnerforadollar.co, and find all her resources there. So thanks again, Shelly, and also check out our resources at spedhomeschool.com. We appreciate that. So night, everybody, and we'll see you again next week right here on SPED Homeschool Conversations. Bye.